Good morning, William.
Good morning.
The mayor of Alafria.
Oh, I told you, Carl, not to say that. This remember the last guy that claimed he was mayor? They shot at him. So not good. Got not good to be mayor.
I'll be careful who I say that in front of. Actually, it feels kind of good to have a small group of really bright people in the room. So the Lower Santa Fe watershed planning process is not happening right now. And I sent a letter out to the members of the Santa Fe Water Coalition explaining why that is. Because there's so many things going on. And a lot of the things that we requested in the RFP be done are being done. And I think that's pretty neat. I mean, obviously the E. coli levels are incredible now. They're double digits. And that's one of the things that John did. Um, and it costs a pretty penny to make that happen, but they're consistently being able to meet those E. coli levels. There is a plan that is in motion that's hung up with the Environment Department right now to test water, test the river farther down at I think 4 or 5 different sites to see what's coming out of that the wetlands. I hate calling it wetlands. It is a wetlands anyway. To see if that is impacting the quality of water below there. So that's in the works. It's just kind of hung up on bureaucracy right now. And we're looking at a new plant, which is one of the things we wanted to do an assessment of that, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then we've got all of these different efforts going on right now. And, it's like the Los Angeles Valley Association has some money and they're going to do, I think it's spring restoration and water planning, community water planning. So that's in the works. And there's other things that are going on. I can't remember all of them that I listed. But the big one, obviously, Maury, is what happens with your, this is where it really sucks because you did it. You made it. You got the grant and then it's gone. So we'll see. And I'm hoping Senator Heinrich can pull that out and get us going because that becomes the overarching method of dealing with what water issues that we have, that's for sure. And I do want to mention the things that are going on with the Water Policy Advisory Committee. I think we're overstaffed at times, or we've got too many, well, anyway, never mind. So, I mean, we've got water quality, we've got stormwater management, we've got an educational component. And so those are all good things. They're getting us a little slow out of the gate, but once we get this thing moving forward, I think there's going to be good things that come out of that too. And so in my mind, it's like, as you and I have talked offline or privately, Maury, it's really like sitting back and saying, where can we help? What can we do best? What needs our attention? And some of the things I'm thinking about, and I think I'm in the mood of doing some letter writing in terms of how to, well, a couple things. One is I'm almost thinking we should do some presentations before the city council and the county commission, because a lot of those members don't know who we are, what we've been doing, or what we're up to. And I think it's time to kind of update them and explain to them some of the things that we've accomplished, things that we've done, and just get them familiar with our interest in supporting water issues in Santa Fe County. So that's one of the things I want to talk about at some point is whether or not we feel comfortable in going before those bodies and telling them or kind of, and to start taking some positions, things that we think are important, like the wastewater treatment plant. How do we want to see that go forward? Those kind of things I think are important for us to be recognized. And I see the coalition. This is the way I view this right now, is the coalition is a resource that we can send information to and say, hey, you guys, what will you support this? This is something that you can support, and we can use their voices to support positions that we're taking. And so far that's worked pretty well. And obviously it's one of those things that each member has to think about a little bit. But I think there's collective needs and issues that we can really kind of hone down and start really looking at our water issues and things that we can do. And one of the big things for me now is conservation. That's where the stormwater, I'm on the stormwater management subcommittee of the Rochester, Colorado committees of the WPAC. And so we're going to be looking at ways that we can control stormwater, things that we can do to slow down floodwaters. And I had the most interesting experience yesterday that all of a sudden, all of this stuff comes together. Let me back up a little bit. So as my role with the city of Santa Fe, I help with grant applications. So last Friday, it was last Friday, I submitted with the support of obviously staff, submitted an application to Heinrich's office for $5.5 million. And there's some special thing that's going on now where he can actually fund things himself for the Mount Nelson Remuda Ridge area. And if you don't know where that is, the very southern tip of the city of Santa Fe, and it's kind of bordered by 599, I-25, and Tierra Contenta. And it's a big tract of land. And so we submitted an application to bring water and wastewater into that area, which it needs. Now, what that helps is that takes all those people off wells and hopefully helps the aquifer. I haven't talked to our resident hydrologist, Steve Schultz, yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm right that will definitely help. So yesterday morning, I'm stopping for coffee at Java Joe's, is that right? Java Joe's, and I run into Kyle Harwood. I'm to talking, saying hi, how you doing? Things are going. He's taking his son on a 2-week 10 college tour starting this weekend, which I think is absolutely nuts, but that's okay. So I go to work and I see Jesse and I say, hey, I said, call Kyle. And he says, hey, talk to Kyle about Peter Comas. Now, Peter Comas owns a big tract of land at the very tip of that triangle. And so he may be able to help support our efforts to bring water and wastewater into that area, which goes back to this is where the historical perspective is kind of interesting, because it had to be 15 years ago that he came before the La Cienega Valley Association to propose a development on the other side of 599. It's not anything we had any control over, but it was something that we were interested in without question. And so he came in with, I can't remember which developer person he had with him, but so he comes in and he brings a box of donuts, and he puts a box of donuts right there for everybody to share. Nobody touched the donuts. They absolutely refused to eat any of the donuts. So I have referred to that as the donut thing. So, but when you talk about that piece of property, that's a piece of property that we could use for flood control to slow down the water before it goes into La Cienega, into La Cienega, into La Bajada. And so I texted, hey, so Jesse says, hey, get hold of Kyle and let him know about the connection with Comas and bringing water into Mount Nelson and Remuda Ridge area. And so I did a little caveat saying it would be an excellent place to put in some sort of flood control measure as well. So when he returns from his college tour, we are going to discuss that, and I'm hoping that will be kind of an element. But the first thing I want to do, and I think I'm going to kind of go all over the place, because now I'm talking about county city cooperation, because as the storm water management team of the WPAC, the first thing I want to do is knock on Zoe Ikeson's door and say, how can we work together? Let us know what we can do. And that's one of the things I'm going to do within the next week or 10 days is sit down with her and start chatting about how we can connect what they're doing with what we're doing and what we should be doing. Because right now, I don't think the county's doing much of anything, not that I can see from my perspective. And Zoe is doing a whole lot. And so if we can tap into her expertise and knowledge without overburdening her, which is always a concern in my mind, it'll be an opportunity to do something pretty important. So in terms
Carl,
of the
can I
low,
jump in?
yes,
Just while we're talking about stormwater, I went to the Land and Water Summit last week, and that was all focused on green stormwater infrastructure, but it was really great to hear about a lot of the projects that Bernalillo County and the Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District are implementing. And so I think that in addition to fostering cooperation between the city and the county, I think it could be really fruitful to foster more cooperation between Santa Fe County and other counties, especially Bernalillo County, that's doing a lot of really great work in Albuquerque and along the Middle Rio Grande.
that's great. That's really good news. That's exciting to me. Yeah, so thank you very much. Yeah, and please interrupt me. I'm going to ramble a little bit today, I'm sure. Anyway,
Oh, well, let me interrupt.
please.
So I think Darren gave you a call yesterday, or but he's invited the WPAC of the county out to La Bajada for a tour, and so I'll be Tuesday at 10, I guess. Um, so, and I think you might have, I was suggesting that our new commissioner, Lisa Kakari Stone, be invited just because I'm sure she's never been to that area. Um,
Right.
and then uh, Camila Bustamante might go. Um,
Good.
so, that's just kind of, and Hilario Romero's going to do a little history thing, and he's supposed to bring burritos. But uh, I guess that's the and I've heard from other commissioners that the WPAC is really doing good things, but they're just not reporting on it back to the community. So I don't know.
Well, from my perspective, we've got a lot of good ideas, um, but I haven't seen them move forward yet. And so we'll see how this goes as we get into the next few meetings. But I believe there's a presentation before the county commission about the various projects or work things that we want to get done this year. And so, yeah, I think there's promise without question, more so than I think we've ever had in the past. There's no question about that. We still suffer a little bit with some of the newer employees still trying to kind of figure out what's going on. And William, when you say you want the new commissioner to see La Bajada, I'd be happy to set up maybe a tour of the lower Santa Fe River. I mean, along all the way to Tres Rios, if that would be something that would be beneficial. So let me know about that.
Yeah, I think so, and I knew you were start or going to do that because we've been talking about that for months already.
Oh, I've taken a lot of people on the drug. I've taken county staff, I've taken city staff,
Oh,
I've taken representatives from American Rivers. And so I think we've got a pretty good start, but I certainly think we need to continue that and make sure people are aware of what the area actually looks like. And as an aside, Tres Rios, we are just about to have an incredible brochure that Emily Wolf put together. And as soon as that is finalized, you'll be receiving copies because it's absolutely beautiful and wonderful. And we've got a site map and proposed locations for things. And Alonzo is working like hell to do the transfer of development rights so he can acquire the property. And that's getting closer, it seems. So that's all good news. Yesterday when I was talking to Kyle, he asked me if the city had decided to try and get return flow credits for going down the Santa Fe River. And I said, yeah, that's one of the initiatives that we start. And actually, the next collaborative meeting, Bill Schneider will make a presentation on the city's two meetings with the Office of the State Engineer, so we can get an update on the feasibility of that. But you know something, it was one of the tours. I remember this so vividly. So I'm taking all the city guys and they're down by the river, and you know, it's like this real moment. And Alonzo's sitting there talking about the river, talking about things, and he was great tour host. And he looked at these guys and says, you know, if you put in that return flow pipeline, it's going to kill this river. And you could see the collective people just kind of looking at each other going, oh, really? I mean, it was like a reality check that all of a sudden it wasn't something that was, you know, in their heads. This is a reality. If you do that, it's going to kill the river. And so it was one of those moments, I think, that had some influence on the city's decision to try and get return flow credits from the Santa Fe River. So I think that's one of the reasons that tours are so important. And the other thing is tours of the facilities, both the wastewater treatment plant and the BDD. Are things that I would like to organize because I think it's important for people to see how things are run and operated. And they can see that there are the issues with the wastewater treatment plant, and they can get a sense of what's going on with the BDD. Even that has I'm not sure the way to describe it, but some of the tanks were supposed to be standing straight up and down are sideways because they didn't want to raise the roof. So they don't work the same way. It's one of the filtering tanks and stuff. So there's some design defects in that structure that are still being resolved with lawsuits. So that's kind of an interesting aside. So in terms of the lower Santa Fe watershed planning process, it still is part of the agreement that the city and county made for the pipeline. And so it's still out there. And I think at some point, if we feel it's important enough, we can raise our hand and bring that back and remind everybody it's something that we would like to continue. But again, Maury, if we get the watershed management plan funded, then that becomes kind of a side, it kind of overshadows it is what it does. It kind of takes over. So it's a wait and see in terms of that. Now, the Paseo Real wastewater treatment plant. I think most of you have seen Corello made a presentation before the city council explaining that a new plant would be 660 million, I believe, and a rehab of the plant would be around 350 million. And that's pretty close to what they.
I thought the Corello thing was 750 because
It could be.
comes from Stan Holland.
Okay,
And
you're
I was
probably
talking to
right.
him, so
It's pretty outrageous, though. And
yeah.
so before John left, and I think this is still something that the city staff, water staff support, is a design and build. So you basically cut out the engineers to some degree because you're dealing with a company that has done hundreds of these plants, knows what they're doing, and they can come in and do it for, he said, about half of that. And so that would be the same as what Corello quoted for a rehab of the existing plant, which I don't think we can ever support. It's still just too many question marks and too many things that could go wrong with that plant that I don't think any of us trust it. So this is one, there might be a letter. We might write a letter saying, hey, we've considered these different things and our support is behind the idea of a design and build because we feel it is the best way to go. But it has to include the treatment, the constructed wetlands. That has to be part of this. And so that
Carl,
would be
can I ask if the city is getting other bids or estimates for
We're not-
those two options?
without John right now, those kind of things are on the back burner. And so that anything's happening going forward, and I don't know what the process is to hire a new director. So that's in the works, I guess. And Jesse is up to his eyeballs on, if I told you some of those things he has to deal with, it's just absurd sometimes. A lot of them are administrative things that you would think would be taken care of by other people. But anyway, so it's not like on the forefront of anything at this point. And maybe that's something we do. Maybe we bring it to the forefront and say, hey, we expect other bids. And yeah, it would make sense to do more than one company making bids, that's for sure. But that's down the road, I think. But again, it's one of those things, maybe as we write a letter to the city council and the county commission, since both of them are in a sense invested. Well, and that's one of the things too, is can we request that the county be involved and it become a county city facility? Those are the things I think we as an organization can talk about and recommend and suggest. Because it just makes sense, at this point in time. And then we're going to head to the idea of a regional water authority. And it's just, again, things that make sense may not make political sense right now, but they just make sense in terms of if we're going to manage our water correctly and do the best we can with our water resources. It works. It does. I mean, you can look again to Bernalillo County and see how successful they've been in terms of depoliticizing water and making good decisions about it. And so that's something. Yeah. So that's the Paseo Real wastewater treatment plant. That's going to be interesting because it doesn't have the same strength of leadership that the water division has. And without John, I'm a little concerned about it. So we'll just see how that continues to work. And again, I mean, it's an old plant. And if you do a tour of that, it's really a very shining example of why we need to replace it. So county city cooperation on water issues, how to make it happen. Good question. Ideas, thoughts on how to make it happen?
Well, let me go back to your regional ideas. And, like our guy in Agua Fria was Amarante Romero. I mean, they used to call him Mr. Water. And he was on the Metropolitan Water Board and all types of things. He actually drilled wells back in the 50s, I think, or maybe even late 40s. He drilled like one of the first wells there by the Santa Fe Place Mall, and he hit a artesian well, and
Wow.
the water was just popping up like 100 feet in the air, and they just had to quit for a while, and I mean, the pressure from all this water coming off of the mountains, I mean, that's what created that big water spike. But anyway, he was big into regional stuff, and they were kind of headed that way, and it got, I don't know, sidetracked or something. And so now we come to Mayor Weber, and he's been telling the county commissioners that he's not interested in anything regional because he feels that the regional emergency communication center, the regional landfill, that the city got the short end of the stick on all these regional deals, and he's no longer interested in anything regional. And I guess it came up to him on a regional wastewater plant, because the county was looking at possibly doing a wastewater plant, and the whole idea from the Environmental Protection Agency is that you don't approve a bunch of city plants and county plants, and you talk about regions when you are doing this planning. And so EPA Dallas has always thought of the wastewater plant as a regional plant. So, but I don't know that they'll be in existence by the April, but anyway, we have to adhere to Carl's pledge of no politics. But then there's politics, and then there's reality. I think this might be more reality. But the mayor's, he had his cancer, I guess 3 years ago, treatment in the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix. He just had his heart attack. Maybe he will not be so opposed to this. And the commissioners have been talking to councilors about regional stuff. So, it may be that there is, and thank you, Carl, for your letter thanking Commissioner Green. I talked to Commissioner Green, and he was tickled that you had written that. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
No, it just, it's like there's common sense involved, folks. And there's just, sometimes we don't use enough common sense. And so that's kind of my theme in terms of us making sure that the county, and I think as advocates, that we can play a role and support that. I mean, it's one of those things we've got, 20 organizations, associations, people, and that are in the coalition that all of a sudden say, hey, we're all supportive of this. It makes a difference. And so those are the kind of things that we can take from the collaborative and present to the coalition, I guess, is the way I'm looking at it. I see the collaborative as more active, more trying to get things done, maybe. Then we can talk about the structure in a little while, but I think
let me talk about a meeting I had on Tuesday with what they're calling United Communities of Santa Fe, and it's the
wow.
Santa Fe no, can you Santa Fe Basin Water Association, and
Okay.
and so Paul White's our president, and he called this meeting, and we had we were kind of looking at meeting with all the mayoral candidates, and we had Tara Nix at our meeting, but we met earlier before she came, and who was there was Randy Bell from the Old Santa Fe Association, and Rick Martinez from the Santa Fe Neighborhood Network. And I was just kind of eating my salad or something, and they were talking about how important it is to do this wastewater plant. So basically, Rick and Randy, and how important it was to deliver good water below the plant to the lower Santa Fe River. And Rick was saying that he's like in some birding associations, and they go through the wetlands, and they take tours and stuff, and looking for birds. So I was impressed that they were, they were so up to speed on what we've been talking about for years, Um, and they're pretty upset about at the Marty Sanchez, I don't even know what that holding pond that's out there, and they keep
Yeah.
um, reducing the water levels, and because that's another big birding thing that people go out to. Um, so I mean, and the both of them were, keenly aware of these issues.
That's really a good sign, you
Yeah.
know, a really a better sign than we've seen in the past, I think, for sure. I've heard Carol Romero Worth may run for mayor too, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's I think there's 6 already that are kind of in there, and that throws it open to you know and with ranked choice voting, someone that gets a second or third vote, um, can win it.
Can
So
rise to the top, yeah.
yeah, so and in fact, Taryn was saying that she has a first vote strategy, a second vote strategy, and a third vote. I mean, she's like the real data queen on all of this stuff. And what's interesting? She's deputy state land commissioner, and so I forget exactly what her job is, but wherever the land office has land, they collect information about market rates in the area, um, development happening, if they can lease for higher rates, this type of thing, and what, like, especially affordable housing, could affordable housing be on the state land office land on the outskirts of Santa Fe? So I mean, she knew forwards and backwards all of this stuff. I mean, she was really impressive. um, and I think that um, you know she's got all these videos now. I think, well, at least 4 videos, and they're like 2.5 minutes each, and they're like saying, well, the repair of roads is a problem, and this is what's not being done, and this is what we need to do. So I mean, and no one else is really hitting the public with so much effort, or at least right now, maybe they're holding off. I know that, like, Ron Trujillo, he's a sergeant at arms at the legislature, and the legislature has a thing where you can't really do anything political during the time of the legislature. So
Session.
so I think he's kind of hampered by that. And then Joanne V. Hill Koppler, she goes to a lot of Lobo games, but that's the only place you really see her at. So, I mean, obviously the mayor's race is going to be a big thing to the future of Santa Fe. And I think it's so critical. I've written about stuff that, 2 years into his term, um, the mayor was kind of at 250 million of a backload of infrastructure repairs to roads, and then it went to 500 million, and now it's pushing 1 billion. And if you add the 750 million for the wastewater, and then Genoviva Chavez, and I mean, we're talking about $1.5 billion of infrastructure backlog in the city of Santa Fe. And typically they go for a $30 million bond every 2 years. So you're talking about more than 66 years to pay off $1 billion. So I mean, it's like impossible. I mean, instead of building roads, you'd be better off investing in something from the Jetsons, a little little personal
Jetpack.
devices that, yeah, jetpacks. We would just, we wouldn't need roads. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that obviously the mayor election is going to be really important. So we'll see how that plays out over the next, what, 8 months, 9 months. Um, should be interesting. I just don't think Weber's got the same support he had in the past. So, but that's just a very, naive opinion of someone that doesn't live in the city.
No,
So,
well, I think you're right, because in January of 2024, he commissioned a study of his favorability, and he was only at about 18%, and that's pretty low. And yeah,
that's
uh,
really,
but with 6 people in the race, you can outright win it with 18%. I mean, it's a possibility. So, maybe he shouldn't be ruled out.
pretty wild. Okay, Maury, you want to talk about your grant?
Sure, I can just spend a few minutes. I think everybody here already knows about it. But we were awarded our cooperative watershed management program proposal that we submitted in September of 2024 to the Bureau of Reclamation. And it's kind of in a back and forth period. I sent out an email to all of our partners after not having heard for over a month anything about the grant moving forward. But since then, Senator Heinrich's office was able to push something forward, and I have been in contact with a grant officer since then. So I'm not holding my breath one way or another, but I'm still hopeful that the cooperative watershed management program within WaterSmart is I think it has a very strong bipartisan reputation, and it's not funded through the Inflation Reduction Act. It's funded through the bipartisan infrastructure funding, and so there are some hopeful signs that maybe it could happen. The original timeline is supposed to start or be from October 1st of this year through September 30th of 2028. So it's a 3-year grant if we are awarded. And as Carl mentioned, it is kind of an umbrella, kind of big picture type of plan that I think the main goal of it is to bring together the geographies of the watershed that are so often siloed, like we've been talking about, the upper, middle, lower, urban, rural parts of the watershed, to identify what plans have been done to make sure we have an updated stakeholder list and, some of these very basic things, and figure out how we can best keep interacting and working together without becoming even more redundant in our little silos of what each of us are working on. And the plan also outlines identifying and designing one restoration project in each of the regions of the watershed with, of course, a lot of stakeholder support and input through the whole process. So we'll see if that how that unfolds, but of course I'm happy. Well, I will be keeping everybody updated, but if I haven't sent you the plan or the proposal already, I'm happy to do that or resend it. And we'll
I've
see how that
forgotten
unfolds.
the amount of the grant.
It's for around $200,000. So chump change compared to a lot of these other projects that the Watershed Association staff would be leading the project. So that would cut down on expenses quite a bit. But yeah, I think that in terms of the lower watershed planning, I don't see this umbrella plan as substituting for a more focused lower watershed plan, but I hope that it can be helpful in laying some groundwork at least, and synthesizing work that is already being done and has been done, so that whatever happens going forward, can be as impactful as possible. But I don't see it as a be all and end all of plans. And the frustrating reality sometimes is just that planning is an infinite process. But I think this would be really helpful, especially if it could happen in parallel with a lot of the other planning processes that are happening right now, from the different plans happening on the county level and the city level to the state regional water planning process and things like that. So I also am in conversations with stakeholders of the municipal watershed, that we will be trying to update the management plan for the upper watershed as well in the next few years. So that's another plan and another parallel. But hopefully, it can be helpful, and with all this planning and all of our brains focused on water, it's a good time to just get on the same page. So I think that's about it for right now. Keep y'all in the loop.
That would be wonderful. It really would. I mean, it's one of those things where it's, and not the culmination of what we've been doing, but certainly it's one of those things that's so vital in terms of us moving forward and making a difference. And it looks like we may have Darren joining us from Lalahala. Are you able to hear us, Darren? He's still. Anyway,
Paige has her hand up, Carl.
Yeah,
I
can hear you guys. I don't know if you can hear me.
we can.
Oh, thanks
How
be
did
to God.
How did it go this morning?
Wow, whatever, you know how it is. Typical bureaucracy, but I did let's take the Sage's topic first, because I jumped on just now at some larger watershed planning, but then I had a couple of specific questions for Maury just on my field reconnaissance from the location I was at. No?
Okay, go for
Wonderful.
it.
yeah, I'll just jump in really quick. I just have a couple questions for you guys. One, I do have the capability of doing E. coli testing. So if there, I'm obviously up in Taos, so I'm not as quick on the draw, but I'm, if you guys needed some specific locations or timing, please reach out. I'm happy to make that a priority and get down there and do
Great.
some sampling. So that's a resource. Granted, depending on what happens in the rest of the week, I may or may not be available. But also I had a question. Did you guys say, is he buying Tres Rios back? Is that what I understood?
Yes, Alonso is attempting to regain the property. Yes.
Oh, that's excellent. That's
What was
great
that?
news. That's great
It
news.
is.
I'm glad to hear it.
It would be really cool. And again, I've got this, we're finalizing the brochure on Wednesday. And once it's complete, we'll be able to send it out and you can look at it and think about it a little bit. What we're trying to do is create a community resource, historical, environmental, ecological, all those kinds of things that people can come and experience and be part of. That would include archaeological hikes, it would include environmental hikes, it would include potential trail that goes from La Bajada Ranch, where the county property, all the way to Bandelier, because you'd be able to do it on public land the whole way. And so those, and then a connection obviously to the Rael Ranch as well. And so there's all kinds of opportunities that we're looking at. And it's funny. It's Alonzo's really pushing this, and he is the one that is the leader of the group, and we're just trying to support him as best we can to make things happen. Obviously, we're going to be looking at funding at some point, but we're not quite there, but pretty close in terms of wanting help in terms of figuring this thing out. It would be a whole new access. It wouldn't be coming down Camino Capilla Vieja anymore. There would be an access that would be coming through the La Bajada Ranch property, county property. And actually that would actually serve as a secondary emergency access for people on Paseo Cidabaca who only have one way in and one way out. This would be a secondary emergency exit for them. And so one of the things we are very conscious of is the need to work with the county, because they have some plans for La Bajada Ranch, and whatever we do needs to be done in concert with them. And so we are moving forward. It would wish it was a lot faster, but there's nothing simple about this.
Oh, what a segue.
What was that?
I say, oh, what a segue.
Anyway, oh goodness. But keep your fingers crossed, because this could be incredible. One of the people in our group is Merle Levkoff, and I don't think many of you know her. She's an internationally recognized facilitator and mediator, works a lot in other countries, has projects in the Middle East, and she teaches. She's an adjunct professor for the Quebec University, I believe. And we're going to set it up. There's a studio out at the ranch, and we're going to convert that into an educational place. And she wants us to start having classes there, which would be really cool. So that's one of the things. It's a learning experience. We want people to come experience this. We want a farm to table restaurant. We want all these different things going on there, and it's just such a great location to really bring the history of the area, going back to the Pueblo times and before, and really getting a sense of what this special place is. What's interesting, I don't know if you guys know Hilario Romero, who was a former state historian, right, William? He's writing a book on that area, because it's like Santa Fe gets all the attention in terms of the history. But if you look at the history of the La Cienega Valley, it's pretty impressive as well. And I remember talking to him a few months ago, and he says, I said, how's the book coming? He said, every time I've got to add more chapters. I got to add more stuff. And so I'm going to check in with him and see what he's up to these days, because that would be an interesting segue into what we're doing in general.
Okay,
And so we have,
So it's like a history of the Santa Fe River. And
there you go.
he's saying it's gonna be like 3-4 inches thick.
Wow.
And that's
lie.
been
No lie.
what his challenge is like getting it to a publishable format.
Wow.
Maybe
Okay,
he could
so-
have like a, condensed version, and then he could have like all the appendices and for the real dedicated historians,
That's
because
how
it seems a
that's kind-
shame to cut it down.
No, you can't cut it down. And now this is why I jumped in saying, oh, what a segue. Is I guess there's only 7 participants in this meeting right now, right?
Right.
Okay, so Hilario's next appearance is going to be in La Bajada this coming Tuesday. Okay,
Cool.
and I guess as I look at these participants, I have no reservations at all about inviting everyone on this call right now down to La Bajada at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. weather permitting, I'm looking at the weather and, you know, we got this one storm coming, but I bet you Tuesday's going to be beautiful. And the intent is that it's a gathering that is not so focused on any one particular of these issues. As Maury and I were talking earlier, it's also interrelated. And I think I'll go ahead and speak for Hilario because he's been talking for a long time about doing history of the Santa Fe River all the way from Peña Blanca all the way to Santa Fe. That includes all the parajes and the path of the Camino Real. And which also, you know, I mean, the river is the river, and everybody knows that traditional pathways of travel were along the river. And so in addition as well to whatever's happening with the Tres Rios, I guess, grand plan is, you know, the village of La Bajada has just had their last meeting with the county on our community plan, which has been several years in the making. We got declared a traditional community in 2016, and we're barely coming up with the actual community plan for the county to be submitted to the BCC here at the end of this month. So, but I think, again, I would invite everybody that's on this call to come to La Bajada at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, and we'll meet in front of the Church of San Miguel. And the intent is to walk up the canyon to where our presa, our head gate for our acequia begins. And then hopefully we can give you a lot of history and context and background and all this, that we can get people to understand, you know, when I show up at the WPAC sometimes and you say you're from La Bajada, and they're like, where, you know? And that's where you have to understand that this is not just the outflow of the Paseo Real treatment or reclamation plant or whatever the flavor of the day is, but this is our livelihood. You know, el agua es la vida, and the river still runs here, and our acequia still runs here. And these are base stations for all of the cattle operations that occur up on the Caja del Rio. And so I really encourage anyone that's able to attend next Tuesday to come down here. All I got to do is call Hilario and tell him to bring more burritos.
That's cool. Very cool. I like Eladio a lot, man. Good dude. Hey, why don't we have him come to the next collaborative meeting?
Well, I'm actually
great.
kind of disappointed that Alonso wasn't at this one, but you know, but I seen him take off this morning with the four-wheeler. He must be doing something with, they're separating something because we got heifers down here at the base station, and that's something that's been ignored for a long time, is that La Bajada is the base station of livestock for everything else that runs up on top of the mesa. And this is where we do our winter feeding, and this is where we do our separation of heifers, and this is where we do our growing of sheep and all that. And so that's kind of a traditional use that has been ignored for a long time, you know, especially in the face of things like areas of environmental concern where we see you know, certain outsiders start mentioning conflicts between grazing and the health of the river. And that's totally not the traditional life way. The traditional life way is that flash grazing keeps this river alive, you know, all the way down here. So maybe that's something that needs to be brought up, and I hope I didn't do it out of context, but.
Okay.
So anyway,
Right.
next Tuesday, everybody come down. May I interject my question to Maury now for the Watershed Association?
Please.
I was just up there at Plaza La Prensa, where there's a lot of state buildings and that, and of course the New Mexican, the Santa Fe New Mexican printing operation and all that. And I'm looking at all this parking lots, And I'm not seeing the same kind of I guess it's rain gardens or watershed return that would go into the arroyos that would be very beneficial. It's so close. In fact, it's on the edge of the La Cienega Valley, but on the frontage road south of Mutt Nelson. And I'm looking at these. I don't know where those drains go. Do those drains go to the plant or to Paseo Real, or do those drains go to the arroyos, or what's happening there? That's such a excellent wastewater, stormwater capture opportunity that I just needed to ask Maury if the Watershed Association was already, had that on their list for improvements to be made, or if what I'm looking at with a couple of trees in the parking lot is already one of those like they have at Santa Fe High School, or not.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. And I know Carl is excited to get his words into, but we are not specifically working in there, and I know Carl is, but I think Zoe Isaacson is an important person to connect with about anything stormwater, but I do think those storm drains are going right into the Arroyo and down into La Cienega. But yeah, right now the current city, land development code means that, or says that, new construction has to harvest all of the stormwater for a certain storm, but what that's meant in practice has just been building these detention basins that really just breed mosquitoes.
Right.
And so in the new land development code, which chapter or the phase 1 should be getting to the governing body anytime. I haven't heard that it's gotten there quite yet. But I was on the Citizens Advisory Working Group for that, working to clarify the language to make sure that bioretention basins are required on new developments and redevelopments, so that water is actually infiltrating into the ground and it's not just sitting there in this pond where nothing's happening. But
Into mosquito
I
pit. Yeah. Right.
yeah, so I think everybody's thinking about it and the implementation hasn't quite happened yet. But I know Zoe's doing a lot, and I know Carl's got his eye on that area too. But thanks for keeping your eye out, because definitely just like looking around at every parking lot and every impervious surface and understanding what makes a good functional bioretention basin or rain garden and what is not working is really important, because then we're all helping get the word out and helping hold our neighbors and fellow community members accountable and helping our watershed be healthier.
Right. And that seems like a lot of state property. These are all state offices that exist there. And I think we just got a good signal from Stephanie maybe in the last couple days, and that maybe it's something that she should be approached with. And then I guess since Zoe's not on the call, maybe someone should invite her la próxima Tuesday too, to come on down and see what's going on. Because the main thing is that I was looking at that. It had one drain, like typical sewer looking drain. That's why I was concerned. Is this running to the plant, or is this running to an arroyo, or what? But the asphalt is all cracked in the parking lot, which just brings me to anybody coming to La Bajada next Tuesday. Be very careful. The Corps of Engineers Road on your way here is full of potholes that will ruin your front end and if you're 4-wheel drive, your transfer case and all that. But yeah, I saw this as an obvious target for remediation. And I was hoping it was on your list. That's all.
It's kind of on my list because I'm trying to enter a crusade with state facilities, actually. Because the city does not control state property. And a sad story is that Andy and Aaron Kaufman put in a rain garden at the NMED parking lot off of Alta Vista in 2017. And as
Yeah.
the state was doing all of their new weed barrier gravel landscaping, contrary to all of NMED's best practices around the state, they took out the entire rain garden. They took out the tree. They took out all of the native species. They planted a pine tree under the weed barrier that is already dying.
Alta
And
Vista,
so I
I
think,
know. Yep.
yeah, so it's I think you bring up such an important point that state agencies, state facilities need to be modeling the best practices that state agencies have already put forward for green stormwater infrastructure, because those policies are not overlapping between the agencies and the facilities management, because state facilities are not modeling best practices in terms of
You're saying
stormwater.
you're saying they're not consistent. And so
Yeah,
even if we're talking about a bigger project like 30 by 30, then what we should be talking about is like you say, modeling best practices with what the state already has complete control of.
totally.
And so maybe the gap here is in the communication between the state and the city, but alhamdulillah that you got Carl Dickens, Mr. City Guy, is you know, heading this particular collaborative. So Carl, write that, make a note, man.
Well, let me give you some notes. You missed the beginning of the movie. I mean,
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
you missed the beginning of the meeting where I was describing what I had done last Friday.
Yeah.
And that was to submit an application to Heinrich's office or some special deal for funding for bringing in water and wastewater to the Mount Nelson Remuda Ridge area.
Mm-hmm.
And that is in process. And coincidentally, I have ran into Kyle Harwood, who's representing Peter Comas. Peter Comas owns the area at the very southern tip of that triangle that's demarked by 599, I-25, and Tierra Contenta.
Yeah.
And to me, that would be a perfect location for a flood control, water reclamation, whatever you want to call it, aquifer charge thing. So that's one of the things that actually Jesse has given me the authority to work with Kyle. Kyle Harwood is representing Peter Comas. And so I'm going to work with Kyle and start talking about those kinds of things. But going back to what you're talking about, Darren, this is so important because, yeah, the city's got a lot of responsibilities. The county's got to do stuff now, too. And we are on that stormwater committee or team, whatever you want to call it.
You
And I
can't
think
call it a
that
committee
really,
because if you call it a committee, we're subject to the Open Meetings Act. And yes, we're on the work
that's
group. You're
bullshit.
correct.
But anyway, so excuse me, that's the first time I've cussed on a collaborative meeting. Anyway, so I think that we need to, number one, the first thing I think we need to do in terms of stormwater management, the WPAC, is connect with what the city is doing. So that's Zoe Ikeson. So we meet with her and talk about her, how we can coordinate our efforts. And then some of my ideas is to start to map all of the arroyos in Santa Fe County and start working with the Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources and identify areas that would be best for us to tackle and slow down water coming through those arroyos to help recharge the aquifer. And
You're
then I think
exactly right. You're exactly right. And that's what comes into this whole county has the separate water treatment plant and all these heads that are you know, recent arrivals that are living out in El Dorado and Rancho Viejo and all this and coming to you with ideas from Colorado and stuff. Their best idea, according to the county, is let's sell it as bulk water to keep the dust down while we build more stuff, you know. And you've heard me say that what's more important is that you guys are not looking at the lay of the land. And what has to happen is there has to be little pipes that go into these existing arroyos that recharge the aquifer, because that was the natural. While they're sucking the groundwater out, they're not returning their shit water back to the arroyos. And if that happened, we could be cutting the loss of aquifer in the La Cienega Valley or the lower Santa Fe River by maybe 30%, you know?
Yeah, it's just something that, yeah, we need to push and make happen. And then I think there need to be, the county has to match the city in terms of incentives for conservation measures too. It's one of those things where the city has been very progressive. For all kinds of incentives. The county, to my mind, doesn't do anything in terms of incentive
You're
side.
exactly right. You're exactly right. The county throws their hands up and says, let's talk to the state engineer, and that's the ultimate authority. And the city says, we're the best in conservation, and now we can make all kinds of let's go to Mars plans because we're so good at conservation. So that is one thing that we need to sort of mediate and get that conversation more into line with reality, you know?
But,
Yeah,
part of our problem was that, the county put all of its negotiations into Commissioner Anna Hamilton, and the city put all of their faith in Councilor Carol Romero Worth. And then they had two meetings, and they were supposed to have a continuing series of meetings involving the WPAC at the county and the city conservation committee. And, it just fizzled.
That's a
Yeah.
story of our lives, William.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how they do it.
let's unfizzle it. You know?
Okay, well, that's where you come in, Carl. So,
I agree. I mean, and we were again talking earlier about maybe making some strong position letters and sending them both to the city council and to the county commission, and even considering making presentations before them, because I think a lot of the newer members of those bodies don't know who we are, what we're doing, and what our intentions are. And I think it's important for us to remind them that there's a whole bunch of people that are concerned about water out there, and we look to them to make good decisions about the future of water in Santa Fe County. And there's things that can be done, and active things that can be done, and things we need to be doing. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
that's a good position. So may I say, or may I suggest, Carl, you're on point for getting the city heads together. And then William and I will invite the two concerned commissioners down to the lower watershed for Tuesday, so they can get the bigger picture. You know, I know Bobby's in there too, and she says she's been up and down the whole Galdang River. You know, and and she could probably offer something very positive on what we may be trying to put together.
Bobby's quiet.
¿Dónde está la Bobby? Yeah.
But Darren, I don't really, I don't know. I mean, what are you asking me exactly?
I'm asking you if you can be a conduit because during the course of rivers run through us expeditions along the Santa Fe River, and maybe this goes to a different topic again. I missed half the movie, you know. So it is that I think you offer a very valuable perspective on the entire course of the Santa Fe River, which leads back to I'm not sure if Carl updated anyone on the city's latest plans to approach the state engineer for return flow credits down the natural course of the river, as opposed to this pinchy paper water pipeline, you know?
Right. So, oh man, well, so our walk was in 2012. So and we did the
I didn't know it was that long ago. I thought you were
it was
just
that
down
long
here.
ago.
I thought
Um,
you're just down
but
here like last year.
but I did not too long ago fly over the Santa Fe River when all the water was being released with a guy who in a small plane, and so that was pretty amazing to go back over areas um where we had walked, from especially La
Right.
Bajada to Cochiti, that whole
Right.
landscape.
And that's where everybody in the state engineer is confused about.
Yeah.
Oh, the river ends, and it's
Mhm.
like, no. If anybody has come up the Jornada del Muerto from TRC to the Rio Salido, they would know, no, there's portions of these rivers in New Mexico that run subterranean because there's sand on top, and all you got to do, this is how our ancestors survived. All you got to do is dig 2 feet down, you can get some water, and the river flows. They used to say the Rio Grande stopped at Socorro, you know
Mhm.
Oh, that's not true. It's just that it runs through sands and I mean, 2 miles worth of sand that river runs through until, all of a sudden, look, there's Elephant Butte. So, and this is the same situation with the Santa Fe River between La Bajada and the confluence with the Rio Grande, is that
Mhm.
everybody thinks, oh, that dries up right there, and those people use all the water, and they're abusers of their irrigation rights, and this and that. And that is not the truth. The truth is that the river runs a foot to 2 feet under the sand and then goes into the Rio Grande. So
Yes.
that if you were, there's no need for this foolish pipeline. And I think you showed me that with your lidar images, that
Right.
maybe that's what you guys were taking through the plane, you know, and that's the important point to realize, is that this rivers do not look like they look anywhere else maybe in the country. So that where you thought, oh no, that's where it goes dry. Yet, how is there still flow into the Rio Grande from the Santa Fe as a tributary? You see?
Yeah, I
Um,
talked about the state engineer's attorney, and I forgot his name now, but he's the one that made the determination that it doesn't reach the Cochiti. And
Oh, oh,
so
okay,
and
Coach, you
and
me nada, but then I hate to be contrary, but then I go, and where is that attorney from?
yeah, well, and he's dead, I think now, but
Well, that's
it
how it
was,
goes.
they used to call it like you know, what the heck was his name? Like they used to call it the doctrine. You know, it was like the Carl Dickens doctrine or something, that the
Don't even.
water. But it was this guy's name, and he was an attorney. He wasn't a hydrologist.
Yeah.
So let
Exactly.
me get,
And you know who the last king hydrologist of any of those guys to come out here was Dr. Hawley. Remember him?
Yeah,
And he was the one that said, no, these guys are all out of their minds. That river flows directly to a confluence. Look, man, there's even a highway sign up there, and the Cochiti Department of Natural Resources and Defense, or whatever they call it, that's where they made their fishery, and they have their own beaver pond and all that, under
Right.
Kaiti Blue Sky. Remember Kaiti? He used to come to collaborative meetings.
Darren, and everybody, I mean, Google Earth is an amazing resource, and you can, you know, go over the Santa Fe River from La Bajada over to Cochiti, and you can see um there was, when we did our walk, when we had to deal with the Army Corps of Engineers, so-called flood control things, walking up and over and around them, there is an oasis. I mean, it's a literal oasis that
Well,
where the water
and
is
that
gathered, and
and that's the
there are
thing, Bobby,
frogs
is
and there are
before that
birds.
you can look at pictures from 1935 and see how this river used to flow. And then there wasn't just a question of Google or the Corps of Engineers. Remember, the Corps of Engineers condemned 135 acres of Lalahala farmland in 1972 because they figured that was going to be the ultimate extent of the lake, you know. And when they tried it in 1980, it turned out that, oh, Earthfill Dam doesn't do it. And now we are raising the water table in the farmlands of the Pueblo to where they can't grow nothing. And that's where it all went wrong, about 1983.
Okay, let's go back to return flow credits on the Santa Fe River. So the city has had 2 meetings with the Office of the State Engineer. And I've asked Bill Schneider to be at the next collaborative meeting to describe what those meetings have produced and where they're headed.
Yeah, Bill. And is he here?
No, next meeting, he was not available today. I tried to get him in today.
Okay. All
But he
right.
will be at the next collaborative meeting.
All right. And please keep me advised on that next meeting. Don't get collaborative meeting. Next actual meeting in the office of the Interstate Stream Commissioner, the state engineer, where we get to go actually talk to him about what's really going on over here.
I will see. It's been I wouldn't say secretive, but they've been quiet meetings.
No, that's typical Santa Fe ring.
Well, it's
Caca
with
caca de toro. That's what I. So, but yeah,
no
no,
comment.
right. Let's figure that out. Yes, and we do need to give some presentations, and we do need to do this kind of thing,
Well, we certainly can ask the question whether these are meetings that are available to other interested parties.
Okay, so tack the village of Lalahala, traditional village of Lalahala, on the list of interested parties and stakeholders,
Okay, we'll see where that goes. Yeah, good.
No, I know he
Excellent.
hates my guts.
Well, I'm just thinking about the Interstate Stream Commission too. Because we have a number of people that I think would be interested in supporting some of our issues and things. And I'm not sure how political they get but I believe they're in the conversation with the OSE about return flow credits. Yeah.
Well, the ISC is a division of the OSE. So that's the whole point, is that those guys though are giving out capital outlay and this and that for Sekia and community ditch improvements. But if they don't have the whole picture, but they've been out here on field trips, so now they know what's going on, you see? So if it's a matter of we got to bring the dang state engineer down here to see what's really going on, then maybe that's what we got to do so that he can go, you know what?
Michelle Hunter's now working with the Interstate Stream Commission. And I believe Catherine Becker, who was a former board member for the LCBA, is their attorney now. So I think that's kind of good. And Eric Erdman, I'm not Eric, but
Andrew Erdman.
Andrew Erdman is there too. And I think he's always been kind of supportive of what we're doing. So I think there's some real potential for some very strong support for our efforts.
Yeah, he was one of the original attendees at collaborative meetings back in 2011. Look how long you've been doing this.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things we've talked about, this is under other matters now, is And we've had some informal discussions about some sort of water symposium. And I don't know what form that takes yet. And I realized as I was exploring the possibility that it would probably cost some money to do, which we don't have. But I still want to keep that as an idea, because I really think it would be a benefit to us, and to the county and city as well. Would be a really good opportunity to kind of share the vast expertise and knowledge that this group contains. And I really don't think we need to go outside this group for any, and maybe we do, for specific presenters, but I think we've got some pretty good people that could do things that are part of our group. And so let's just keep that on the back burner and continue to talk about it, because I think it would be a demonstration of something that's very important. So anyway.
I think
So
you're
I-
right, Carl. And I always support you in that mindset. And I think that maybe seriously, one of the first things we got to do is get some people out here to the quote end of the river unquote, and start looking at some stuff so that they can put the contextual picture in their minds and start thinking about how important it is that the lower watershed is not just the shit pipe out of Paseo Real, you know?
I agree. Completely and totally.
And
Um,
if I can jump in too, I really appreciate that as well, Carl and Darren. And before you got on, Darren, I gave a quick update about, and Bobby, about our Water Smart application from September for a cooperative watershed management program, watershed planning grant. And we were technically awarded the grant, and now we're waiting to see if we actually get the funding or not. And there's a chance that we will get the funding, but there is funding in there for a Santa Fe watershed forum or symposium or summit, or whatever word you want to use, connecting again the three major regions of the watershed, and trying to connect stakeholders from across those geographies, highlighting exactly what you were just saying, Darren, is recognizing the importance and the connection between the upper, middle, and lower watershed, and the different needs, but also the interconnected needs of the entire watershed. And so if we get that funding, that's something that I will have the capacity to support, and staff support and funding and whatnot. So I think it's still worth, and that might be related to the organizational structure, making sure that there's some sort of planning process to make sure that it can accomplish the goals that have been identified, and get done in a good way. But if that happens, I hope that the grant might be supportive of the goal of having a symposium or ideally, or the way that I could envision it right now is some sort of at least annual gathering where folks from around the watershed can come together and connect and share what's going on in their part of the watershed.
Cool. So this is a good segue into the collaborative organizational structure, and to formally acknowledge that Maury is stepping down from being co-chair. I don't think we've formally announced that yet. If we have, that's fine. We'll duplicate it, doing it again. And so it's come to my mind as I look at this, and as someone who's been part of this for a while, that I don't think that we need a chair. What my proposal is that we have like a 5-person kind of executive board. And off the top of my head, I thought a representative from Agua Fria, representative from La Cienega, and usually these would be the associations, and representative from La Bajada, an environmental representative and a Sakia representative, and then maybe a couple ex officio positions for nonprofits that might have are part of the picture as well. And my role would be more as a coordinator rather than a chair. So let's not get into that real detail right now, but I'd like your comments and thoughts about how that might play out.
Would you still handle the agenda and things like that?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
I'm good with that.
But instead of one person trying to figure out that agenda, I would go to the 5-person board and say, hey, what do you guys want to see next month? What do you want? What do you want? What do you think do you want to take on? I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to come up with all these ideas, but at times it gets a little stressful too. And I think that we collectively could come up with some pretty interesting things. And the ex officio positions might be people like the Santa Fe Watershed Association. Maybe Biohabitats might be an ex officio member. Some people that we would look to for advice and counsel and support, but wouldn't have to take on any official role within the collaborative.
I think that's super organic, and it's exactly the way that this collaborative started out in 2011, and that's the way to go, and that you need to start thinking about just talking to local gente like JJ and
Yep.
Robbie Romero and Jose Varela Lopez and people that used to show up at this meetings regularly who I don't see anymore,
Right.
because maybe it became too many interlopers, and maybe that's where no, I think that's a great idea, Carl.
Okay, I'll put it out there and basically, we don't make decisions. I mean, we don't make motions or those kinds of things. So, I don't know
No,
how.
it looks like we write letters and provide informed free prior consent and anecdotal experience, and we are somehow subject matter experts just by virtue of being here for 400 god dang years, and and I think that's exactly the purest way to go.
Okay, I'll put that in writing and send it out to folks
So
for
our
comment.
parish council, from the 1950s at San Isidro till last month, I mean, we've always had a president, a vice president, and a secretary treasurer. And the last few years, I mean, we haven't been able, we've had such turnover that we went to just like a committee structure, and
Yeah.
it seems to work.
Okay. And one of the commitments I made at the beginning of this is not to be political unless it was connected to water. And so I'm going to put Aaron on the spot a little bit and see what impact these crazy decisions in Washington are having on biohabitats.
Yeah, thanks. Carl, it's an interesting question. I would say that, what is the shifts in, funding and position of the administration on like environmental consulting, I think is really very dependent upon where the projects are getting their funding. Right now, as an environmental engineering consulting firm, we are not seeing too many impacts, but that's because we have a really broad mix, and a lot of our work is based in regional municipalities, local and state governments, which
Good.
there's a fair amount of continued support, and I'm hoping even increased support at the state level for restoration projects, some of the planning projects. We're seeing lots and lots of planning proposal requests also across the country, and most of those are either NGO driven, state or local government. For us, that's what we're seeing because we don't hold a lot of federal contracts. However, we are expecting like that some of the funding that might have been associated with the some of the infrastructure or the climate bills to be more at risk. Um, we have several on calls with organizations like National Park Service, which have been paused, and so there's a mixed bag. But I think overall, the important part of moving any clean water agenda forward is going to be at the state and local governments for sure. Um,
Yep.
and some states are better placed to do that than others, and so we think there'll probably be a little reshuffling, but right now we haven't seen any major impacts at all. We've had a few, like we had a living shoreline project for all of South Carolina that had a focus on environmental justice with focusing climate intervention, shoreline restoration in communities with the greatest environmental need and justice need, and that was canceled immediately. Because it had that environmental justice lens within like 2 days.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
Wow.
so there are things like that we've seen, and that was federally funded for the state of South Carolina. So there'll be a mix, I think. I suspect if there are organizations out there that are primarily focused on federal work, it's probably a much bigger problem. But we tend to not do that. We're highly in the places where we're working, and most of that is state and local government. But you
That's
know,
really,
some of that
really
money
good.
also comes from federal set aside. So
Yeah.
it'd be
Well,
interesting to
it's good
see.
to hear. I mean, a
Yeah.
little bit of good news there compared to what we're hearing on a national scale these
Oh,
days.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
for sure. And there's a lot of interest in private restoration. I mean, that may or may not be obvious here in New Mexico, but there are a number of projects that we undertake regularly for private landowners, ranch owners, farm owners, and that kind of work I think will continue. I think people are going to keep doing what they need to do.
cool.
Erin, can I ask related to Carl's update about the wastewater treatment plant, if you have any thoughts on like what um what we as community members should be keeping in mind as we're talking to our elected officials or our collaborators, like because you have a more intimate understanding of like how these systems work and what sorts
Mhm.
of things we need to be thinking about, or even what sorts of price tags we should be kind of having in mind as what's reasonable or what's not. Because I know, speaking for myself, if I hear a number like 300 million or 750 million, I'm like, I don't
Yep.
know what sounds reasonable, or what, or what kinds of alternatives there might be, or things that I might be able to say to my colleagues, like, hey, have you considered these different options? Or, and I don't know if that's a fair question, but however you feel comfortable
Sure.
responding, I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I have not been that closely tied to the Paseo Real renovation and new system planning. So I haven't seen the details of that, but my basic understanding is they're looking at a membrane bioreactor replacement. I think that's correct.
I think
And
so.
I would think
Mhm.
that it's important for the city in their planning and the community engagement with that planning. And I don't know if there's been community engagement. So
None.
I would ask for that because
Well,
that's
that's
really
what I've been
important.
asking for.
Yeah, you have been, yeah, I'm sure. um,
That's a good
eh,
ask. That's a good ask. And if you talk to me directly, I'll try and get you some community loudmouths to engage in the whole thing.
Yeah, because I think that's an important piece. Like there's the technology, right? And there's the site where the wastewater treatment plant is going. And I'm sure they're looking at those alternatives, like where to put it, what kind of system to put in. But there's a lot of other pieces that go into planning. And so that's where I think community voices could be really important. And those kinds of things are like energy efficiency and byproduct, like sludge production, what's that larger nutrient cycle? How much energy are we investing in this system? Because there is a spectrum of how much energy we have to spend to get the clean water that we want. And then there are other aspects, like there are some communities, and I think I've shown some of those slides here in the past, and I'd be happy to come back and do it again, where the like Brightwater is one of them in Washington State, where it's like the water reclamation facility is like a community destination. It integrates public art, it integrates, you know, lots of forward facing kind of like education around water reclamation. And to Darren's, to your point, they, you know, they're trying to shift away from the idea of like a pipe discharging wastewater to like a full water reclamation facility. And I think like that kind of attitude too, even for the designers, whoever ends up building it, that it is, you know, a really critical piece of water reclamation, not just treatment. So yeah, some how the system is built. Like right now, that is a very unattractive place, and you don't even want to drive by it because it smells, you know, let alone go in it. And it's not designed as a forward-facing piece of community infrastructure. And I would say that would be really important to ask for. Then as part of that is like, okay, are we connecting it to Trails Network and to, you know, the lush riparian habitat that gets produced from there down? Like, how does that get access and have, you know, access to some of that water? Right now, you have to like push through the tumbleweeds and the gate. I mean, it's very funky, right? There's not a whole lot of opportunity for people even to experience the clean water that's being made, which hopefully will be a lot better when they upgrade it. And then, yeah, I think treatment wetlands could be part of that community story to renaturalize the water before it goes into the river. Those systems can be lined or unlined. Like if there's a concern about infiltrating too much water, then you line it and you just let it continue back into the river, but you get additional treatment and habitat built out of that. If you wanted to build systems that increase the ability to recharge the groundwater, particularly if you could get that proof that that water from the Santa Fe River corridor is moving to the Rio Grande, then you could consider wetlands for infiltration. But I know there's a lot of sensitivity with the lower river, you know, Darren, as you pointed out, to like consider that, you know, those water deliveries continue. So you could build wetlands in either way that do that, but that also provides some habitat and community and benefit. Because we're spending what, $300 to $700 million or more to upgrade it, and no one will experience it. So I think that's I'm not saying no one would, but it would be a shame if no one could, and get some other community benefits out of that. So there's also some, you know, potentially interesting co-location of like an industrial ecology perspective. Like I know there is some discussion of like they have a lot of recycled water that'll be available at that plant. Are there other, you know, like co-located businesses that could benefit from that on adjacent parcels? I don't know. I've seen a little bit of that in the past, like looking at some, you know, co-location of like reforestation infrastructure, for example. So I would ask for a community process to be involved, particularly when it comes to like the site and the larger land planning and connectivity and habitat benefit.
Yeah.
Are we
I
still
agree.
looking at, Carl, is there still, is it, is building a new one in another place still an option? Or is it
Well,
upgrading?
it would be, John had it's a property that adjoins where it is now. That was his kind of vision. So there's really, as I was saying before you got on, Bobby, is that that has become kind of a back burner thing right now because we don't have John kind of pushing it. But I wanted to go back to what Erin said because she's talking about King County, Seattle, their wastewater treatment. It's got an event center. It's an experience to go there. And it's just fabulous. And one of the things we're looking at from the city's perspective is how they hire their operators. So get this, they had, I think, 15 vacancies in their wastewater operator program. They had almost 500 people apply. And the reason for that, there are no minimum qualifications. You hired as a temporary employee and go through a very intensive training process in that first 6 months, which screens out all the people that aren't going to make the grade. And by the end of the 6 months, you've got some really top flight people working for you. And that's the kind of stuff I think and in terms of a space that is beautiful, a space that has all kinds of things going on. It's got the kid programs and different things that are available. And I think that's what we need to do. That's exactly what we need to do.
Good.
I wonder, so as I said earlier in the meeting, I've been moderately involved with the city's land development code update, but I wonder if something the collaborative could do, or maybe as a first presentation, is push for a similar process for the wastewater treatment plant, like feasibility study, to have a citizens advisory working group, that has community representatives and
Yes.
a technical advisory group, so that people like Aaron and all of the incredible, subject matter experts on the technical side also can like really offer those innovative technical solutions, but that we're making sure to center community values and cultural values, so that whatever those community impacts and hopefully benefits result from the planning process are really aligned with what especially the communities closest to the facility are supportive of and are in alignment with. And then that all of that is really important, not just citizens of Santa Fe, but a diversity of voices from the traditional communities in the lower watershed. That those seem to be those might be like very reasonable and immediate asks that we could gather together voices to write a letter and do presentations about.
I
think
think
that's
that's
great.
why, I think that's why everybody needs to pencil in a visit on Tuesday morning. I think that's very important.
I wish I
because-
could. I'm gone, but I think you should do
No,
it.
really? Is that Aaron?
That's
You're
Aaron.
exactly the one I was going to ask. Are you a vegetarian? Because I need to know whether to put peanut butter or a ham hock in the beans,
You know I'd be there right away. Yeah, I'm gonna be in Arizona.
A la monster. Okay, good. Then, well, we're sorry
We'll
to
have a
miss you.
sequel, Darren. You'll have to
I
have
know.
a
We're
sequel.
sorry to miss you,
Absolutely.
but then I guess, yeah, we're gonna have to get you out here by yourself to see what's going on.
I'm happy to come down. I haven't been to that stretch yet, so I would love to see it.
Right on.
Eh.
And then the only thing I say into that is that, yes, as much as some of us consider the upper watershed and the lower watershed, remember that the city divided the lower watershed into 5 different regions for their Bureau of Reclamation study, and said that they all needed to be managed in different ways. And I'm not quite sure where the boundaries of los 5 different regions of the lower watershed lie, other than everything comes out of the Paseo Real plant, so but okay, yeah, so disappointed to hear that you can't see us on Tuesday. But
Appreciate the invite.
bueno.
Okay, folks, it's closing on 2 hours. As always, I think this is an extremely productive meeting. It's one of those things as we look at this world around us these days. And this is a group of good people trying to do good things. And I don't think you ever go wrong with that. So let's just keep at it, keep pushing, do what we can to withstand this onslaught of bureaucratic nightmare that has been created, and we'll just keep moving forward and we'll be better for it. And I'm going to put Aaron in charge of the new wastewater treatment plant, but that's man, listening to you, Aaron, was just like music to my ears. It was like, wow, somehow we need to have you actively involved, and we'll figure that out. But
I'm happy to figure out how to do it through this group or whatever. I live in Alma Fria, not too far from William here, so I've come in that capacity. But happy to contribute. And, you know, there's a lot of potential with that wastewater treatment vision.
Cool.
So,
And
All right,
Aaron
so-
has generously made a relationship with the Watershed Association through Biohabitats, so we kind of have that informal, sort of formal structure already too. So if that's helpful, that could be a good inroad.
Well, this has been great, folks. Thank you all. Be safe. Safe travels. Safe everywhere. Talk to you soon.
bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.